So these two mice really do not have that much in common, as one is $160 and one is $70. One is large and one is medium to small sized, but the one thing that these do have in common for me is that I really do enjoy using both of these in game. They of course provide you with a very different experience, as a large mouse can give you more stability, whereas a smaller mouse can give you more mobility. But there are of course ways in which we can improve our mobility or stability depending on the mouse we are using. We will go through that later in the video, but before we start with some key features in the Razer DeathAdder V3 Pro and the Fantech Aria XD7, check out this ad read right here. This video is sponsored by Opera GX, and if you're a gamer like me, you basically need to try it out, so go ahead and click the link on the description and download Opera GX. It has very good tools in, for example, controlling browser resources, so you can just use GX Control to limit how much memory or CPU your browser can use. I ran this little CSGO benchmark tester, and with the Opera GX and 20 tabs open, I got about 60 to 70 more FPS with the Opera GX than Firefox, so that's very good for sure. You can also control the amount of network traffic to go through Opera GX. If you don't have the best connection, this can of course improve your performance in game or streams. Another good feature that the Opera GX has is that it has integrated social media channels. For example, Twitter, where you can check your timeline, and Discord, where you can check what's new on your server. Or you can use the GX player to keep your favorite streaming services in one place. For example, you can play music from Spotify, Apple Music or YouTube Music. The Opera GX is also available on mobile, and you can connect it to the desktop version. Let's get back to it and start with the quality. Both of these have some minor creaking and some side flex, and also some button wobble, but I can't feel this in real use. The surface finish on the DeathAdder V3 Pro feels interesting. It's not rough, but it's not smooth. It's grippy for me, but it's not the best feeling coating I've tried for sure. The Aria surface then again has this OEM kind of plasticky feeling to it. It's grippy, but it feels cheap, which is okay at $70 in my opinion. Performance is good on both mice, but of course the DeathAdder V3 Pro will win in terms of pretty much everything. So it has lower motion delay, lower click latency, it's able to go 4000 Hz, but in real use in-game it won't make a big difference for you. The battery life is pretty much the same on both of these, so it should last you about 2 weeks, unless you decide to of course use 4000 Hz with the DeathAdder V3 Pro. For the clicks then again, the Aria has very tactile and crispy main mouse buttons, whereas the DeathAdder V3 Pro has those Razer opticals, and these have a little bit of mossy click feel to them. And at the same time, the switches are heavier to actuate than on the Aria, so I would say the Aria has a better click feel and the clicks are more spammable. The side buttons are good on both mice. This time the Aria has a little bit heavier actuation, and there is very minimal travel on both of these mice. The scroll wheel is heavier on the Aria, and it has more defined and tactile steps. The DeathAdder V3 Pro scroll wheel is actually quite light and smooth, but I would like more tactile and defined steps. The mouse feet are great, as these both perform extremely well with the Addice Inc, which is a somewhat rough pad that will feel smooth with good mouse feet. Both mouse feet offer a little bit of friction on the Addice Inc version 2, so you can perform precise flicks just fine, and also of course tracking as well. In terms of shape, I've talked quite a bit about the DeathAdder V3 Pro in a previous video, so it's a large ergonomic mouse with a very safe shape. They've basically minimized all the curvature on the mouse from the DeathAdder V2, and at the same time made it more like the EC2, which is a very good move in my opinion. With a large mouse like this, you will get a lot of stability, and because it is lightweight for its size, it will also feel quite mobile. I like to use it for pretty much everything, but I think it's most optimal for slow-paced and precision-heavy games like TAC FPS. I did like to also use it in Apex, as my tracking was accurate, but I did not feel quite as mobile as I do with a smaller mouse just looting and looking around. Then again, talking about the shape of the Fantech Aria XD7, it's basically a larger Orochi version 2, which is not a bad thing by any means, as the Orochi was too small for quite many people. It was on the verge of being too small for me as well, and I think the Aria is a better fit for my 19x10cm hands. The shape has the same exact features as the Orochi, so it has the diamond or the egg-shaped back, which is very easy to hold deep in the bottom of your palm. The curved sides make it so that it can be very wide to grip from where the sensor is located and somewhat wide even from the front of the mouse. But the back of the mouse is narrow, so the most contact with your palm and the mouse will be happening on the middle and not so much on the sides. Overall, the shape does feel comfortable, but for me and my hand size and grip style, there is some issues with the location of the side buttons at the scroll wheel. If I were to use the back side button, it would be very hard for me to reach it in game, and because I grip the mouse in a way that I have my fingers far up front, it's surprisingly hard for me to even reach the scroll wheel. With a more aggressive claw, this would not be an issue, and it does not cause any major disadvantages for me in game. But for example, in a game like Apex, where I tap strafe and jump from the scroll wheel, I use it quite a lot, and it does feel uncomfortable to move my fingers this much. Of course, this is only an issue in situations when I need to react fast, for example when I'm getting chased and need to tap strafe. One additional good thing about the Aria is also the weight, which is 64 grams on my scale. It's not the lightest mouse I've tried, of course, but it's well balanced and it's very easy to lift and control because of the shape, so I would say the weight is good for the mouse. I would have liked to see this under 60 grams, but in my opinion it would not make a massive difference. But still, compared to the DeathAdder V3 Pro, it's of course quite heavy, as these weigh the same amount on my scale and the DeathAdder V3 Pro is much larger. But let's talk a little bit about the Aria versus the Orochi. So yes, the Aria is larger, but the main difference comes in the width and the length of the mouse. For the way I grip the Orochi, and because it's slightly higher profile, I get actually more palm contact with the Orochi than I do with the Aria. The height difference is very minor though, so the biggest things that you will feel is that width and that length. But anyway, this will be a very familiar mouse for any of you guys that have tested the Orochi version 2. So let's talk a little bit about the Aria versus the DeathAdder V3 Pro. Again, these mice are of course very different in shape, and the main reason why I wanted to compare these two in the same video is the price difference. So do you actually get the performance benefits or more features with the DeathAdder V3 Pro for it to make sense with the price difference? Well, for performance sakes, even though you can't really feel the difference in game, just knowing the fact that you have the best mouse out at the moment can help you mentally, which can of course improve your in-game performance. I know many professional players who are using the Superlight because of this, or have used some other mice in the past because of the exact same reason. So it's very much up to you if it makes sense for you to pay that premium price that the DeathAdder V3 Pro costs, as those mental benefits and the more premium feel can actually make a difference in game. The decision also comes to the fact that would you want more stability or more mobility from your mouse? The question is of course not quite that simple, as if you want a smaller mouse that provides you more mobility but you would want some extra stability on top of that, you could just buy a slower mousepad. Or tweak your sensitivity or adapt your grip style just a little bit. Then again, if you got the DeathAdder V3 Pro for stability but you would want more mobility, you can increase your sensitivity, you can get a new mousepad that's a little bit faster, or again you can modify your grip style a little bit. So for example, at least for me, when I relaxed claw I get a lot of stability, but when I move to a little bit of a more aggressive claw I get more mobility out of these larger mice. I think adapting is always the key, because it's really hard and expensive to find that perfect mouse which may or may not exist. So the best way to go, in my opinion, after having tried over 200 mice is, in my opinion, just adapting to something you like. For closing thoughts, I'm very happy with both of these mice. The DeathAdder V3 Pro is a very good one, and of course it's extremely expensive as well. And the Aria is very good for the price, just don't expect it to be very premium feeling or an insanely good mouse like the Superlight or the DeathAdder V3 Pro. It will treat you well, and especially if you enjoy the shape, this can be an endgame option for you. It's hard to say which I enjoyed more in game. I guess it's a little bit dependent on the game. For Apex I would choose the Aria, and for CSGO or TAC FPS games I would go with the DeathAdder V3 Pro. But I want to make it clear for you guys that at long term, so after using these mice for months, the in-game results, preference and performance would be the exact same. So in Apex I would enjoy the DeathAdder V3 Pro just as much as I do the Aria. As I said, adaptation is the key. For this reason, my number one choice out of these would be the DeathAdder V3 Pro, even with the massive price difference, because it just feels more premium and has that better performance. This was a fun comparison, at least for me, because these two mice are so different, and yet my in-game performance was still quite similar even on short term. That's it for this one. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you enjoy my content, hit the subscribe button, and see you in the next one.